in your brain, you're in the nerds domain. Come on in, it's about to begin.
Hi everybody, I'm Matt.
I'm John.
I'm Jestin.
I'm Shirley.
And welcome to the Nerds Domain podcast. This week we're full of giggles and we're going to talk about what's going on in our lives that's geeky and fun. That's what a Whatcha Doin podcast is all about. So let's start with some news. This week on LinkedIn I got a couple of articles on Examiner.com. I'm going to read the first one. Should Jack Chick's anti-D&D comic Dark Dungeons be turned into a movie? You guys all read this. What do you think? Should Jack Chick's movies or comics be turned into a movie?
Let's explain. Let's do the full explanation of what exactly we're talking about here. There is a Kickstarter currently running right now that purchased Jack Chick's the rights to, well, I don't know about purchased, but obtained the rights to Jack Chick's anti-D&D comic called Dark Dungeon, and what the guy says he's going to do is make a legitimate, real, actual, on script film out of the comic. He's not going to change anything or color it with any political views that are his own. He's just going to reproduce it on film. What I find interesting is he is a gamer. He is a D&D player. So this isn't some, uber religious nut who thinks role-playing games are evil. This is actually someone who plays role-playing games making this film. And as far as should it be made, the guy obtained the rights, so he can do whatever he wants with it. If people feel it should be made, then they'll back the Kickstarter and it'll get made. I'm torn.
Yeah. I find it, I read the article and it says that he's he designed comics and comic tracks and videos and books and posters to promote Protestant evangelism and from a Christian fundamentalist point of view. Yet you're saying that he is actually a gamer and he plays Dungeons and Dragons.
No, Jack Chick is the Protestant evangelist.
Right.
The guy who is producing the film is a gamer. I don't know if anybody else wants to look up the
Rail. Last name's Rail.
Okay.
Well,
J.R. Rails.
J.R. Rails. It's a pseudonym. It's not his real name.
Yeah.
It's not?
No, it says J.R. Rail, the pseudonym for a middle manager in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, okay. Well, he doesn't want to get heat in his real life for this project. I understand that.
Yeah.
No, Jack Chick was a Protestant evangelist, and if I have done my research properly, he passed away several years ago. But yes, he did the Protestant evangelist work you mentioned, and this guy who's going by the last name Rails, J.R. Rails is or Rawls. Yeah, J.R. Rawls is a gamer who is making this stupid comic into a film.
My question is, why are they like this? All of the Pat Robertson thing and the Jack Chick thing, this stuff all happened in the 80s. I mean, why are they bringing this back up?
Because this guy grew up with it, and it's just a good way to bring it back. I am actually interested in supporting this. Because,
really?
Yes. If it wasn't for Maze and Monsters, I would not be playing Dungeons & Dragons.
Jack Chick is still alive.
Oh, is he? Oops.
Yeah.
I apologize.
He is 89, but I mean that's fair. He's 89. He could have died, but
I think it was all the references to the family in the Kickstarter. reading. He got the rights from the family, and he probably just doesn't handle his own business anymore because I don't want to be doing my own, handling that money stuff when I'm 89 either. So, yeah, that's probably it.
So you're saying, Jesse, you're saying Maze and Monsters wants you to support, is leading you to support the Kickstarter for this?
Well, a long time back, Mazes and Monsters, my mom freaked out over it, basically, and kind of pushed me away from gaming, and that kind of pushed me further into it.
Because you wanted to level up some girl to 8th level and teach her how to do real magic?
Exactly.
I get it. It's a reverse psychology thing. You're saying, if this is produced and we back it, it's just going to push more people to game.
More people will be interested in the hobby.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, are we at the point where we should just go ahead and explain the comic, or do we want our listeners to go out and find it?
Honestly, I want nothing more than for Jack Chick to never get another hit, read, or anything.
So we'll just go through the comic.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to, but he was pushed so hard by my family that it became a big thing that we weren't supposed to roleplay in my house. Oh. Hence why I hid my 2nd edition D&D manual under the bed, which I guess Mom knew about, but I like to think she was stupid.
Right.
So
in the comic, and we open up on a D&D group composed of 2 girls and 4 guys with a female DM who is all dressed in black, and we are told that the wizard casts a spell and does some wizardy things, blinds the monster. It jumps to the very next panel in the comic, and the DM is informing the player of the thief named Blackleaf that she did not see the trap and she is now dead.
Hold on. How many girls are sitting at that table?
2.
3.
And the DM was a woman?
Yeah, well, one of the characters is kind of
we know
vague.
that this is all a lie. No, there's not that many girls ever at a gaming table.
See, she said it, so it's funny.
Right.
I say it.
It's sexist, yes. That's how that works.
Sorry.
So, yeah. So, anyway, so the DM outright kills the thief, which I guess they're playing Minds of Madness or Tomb of Horrors, because that's the only time that ever really happens. But,
last Saturday in my D&D game.
Oh, really?
Almost.
Yeah. Just one trap went off and they were dead?
Oh, no, I just could have killed you guys.
Just killed the party and, tried to kill everybody.
So then the female player of Blackleaf the Thief just gets frantic and can't believe the character is dead, and she says, "I am going to die," referring to herself, not the thief, and then proceeds to plead with the DM to not make her quit the game. Which is another problem, because when a character dies, you don't kick that player out of your group, because then
let's talk about the real problem. It's hard enough to get quality players. You don't boot people out of your games.
No, you don't.
Especially women.
Not even when they're invisible and they have a feather over their head.
So then
I forgot about Pat the Shadow Bat.
Yeah. So then the girl who ends up being our main character tells the player of the thief, "Marcy, get out of here, you're dead, you don't exist anymore." Again, this is something that could happen in the wrong group, but I don't really see people, interacting in this way in any situation. I suppose in a cult it's possible, but I've not, joined a cult, so
I don't know a lot about cults, but they don't tend to kick out their members.
Yeah, no, they just sacrifice them.
Right.
They kick out their, but it's usually with Kool-Aid.
And the thing is, this is laughable, and the reason why I feel that it's laughable, I've been playing, I'm a grown-up playing D&D. I didn't play it when I was a kid. I knew about it when I was in high school, but that's what, those guys did over there. I didn't, I wasn't ever indoctrinated into it. And I think it's laughable because, for the past 4 years, all the gaming groups that I've been around, I mean, everyone's just, everybody has that social awkwardness and that little bit of social anxiety, but, you bend over the table and, okay, I know I'm a girl, so it's a lot different for me, but you stand at a table and you're interested in the game that they're playing, more than likely, 99.9% of the time they're going to be like, hey, explain this to me, and everybody's willing to, like, jump up and say, hey, yeah, we're doing this, and this is how the game is played, and, yeah, this is what this character concept is. And the thing I find hilarious about the comic that you're talking about, Johnny, is that to promote the story and the storyline of a game like that, because, most of the games that I've been involved in over the past 4 years, especially Dungeons and Dragons, they're not one-offs, they're not just something that we sit down and play just one time and then, at the end, that's it. We have a lot of story and a lot of character development behind it, and if somebody dies, it's just like, oh, you know what, hey, that character died because I couldn't roll a save on a D20, but I can sit over here and create another character, and they're going to join the party, further down the line, or at the next inn, or at the next town, or something like that.
Yeah,
so,
and
I think. Go ahead, Johnny.
The mythology behind. I mean, granted, remember this comic was written in 1984. So the mythology behind D&D was that there were groups of people who would do that. Like who were that obsessed with this game. This comic doesn't indicate how long they've been playing, other than to tell you that one of the characters raises their cleric to level 8, which, depending on the DM, can take a long time or a short time. But it's clear this girl is invested in her thief so much that she sees her actual real life as over because the fictional character life is over. And there were stories that got blown out of hand and turned into rumors of people taking this too far and actually hurting themselves and or others. And I believe there was only two actual cases, and one in Wisconsin where the game originated, and then another one, a student at the University of Michigan. His character died, and he wandered into some steam tunnels under the university and died down there. I don't know if it was suicide or accident or what, but
that is the story that Myths and Monsters is based off of, right?
Yeah, I believe it is.
Yes.
And I don't know the details of either of those stories, but I do know that it was blown way out of proportion. And in the late 90s, what did you say it was the late 90s when we started playing D&D, Matt? Like regularly?
Yeah.
Yeah, late 90s. When we started playing, my mother was still afraid of those stories.
Yeah.
Your mother's afraid of everything,
well, she is, but she was afraid I would get sucked into a world or into a group of people that didn't have my best interests, that were looking to take advantage of me. And that's assuming things about people that, that are just wrong, because, nobody's really like that. One, nobody I would hang out with is like that. And so I was offended that she thought this, because she was assuming that I wasn't smart enough to know which people to interact with in the world, and I was about to go to college, so anyway, yeah, there was a lot of misconceptions because one or two isolated incidents, and this comic just continues to blow these stories out of proportion. We've now gone through 2 panels of the comic, touched on a third where she's told her cleric has leveled up, which is an inconsistency, because in the first panel, the girl with the pigtails is apparently playing a wizard who casts a spell, and in the third panel she's playing a cleric, and it's time for the real world girl to learn real world spells. You know, and if she's getting real spells out of her D&D book, I feel like I'm getting gypped.
No kidding.
Okay, well let's talk about.
Somebody give me a magic missile.
Let's talk about a couple of things. First, Shirley, you've had an atypical D&D experience.
Okay.
I think Johnny, you have too as well.
Well, I mean, I don't know. It depends on when people come to it in life. I mean, you and I were teenagers. You know, Shirley was more into her adult years.
I played dozens upon dozens of one-offs.
Sure,
I have.
Oh,
that's a big part of what you do.
And it's kind of one of those things. Like as soon as a group can become regular, it turns into a campaign. But like until you are sure you can get together every week, you play. And
I've also started dozens of games that would never went anywhere.
Yeah, they're intended to be
I've walked away from bad games that angered people. I've played games where things weren't explained well, and I got screwed because I accidentally shot Santa. Jesse was there for that one. Shot and killed Santa.
You killed Santa?
Yeah, and then I got the Elven Mark of Disgrace because all elves hate people who kill Santa.
Oh my gosh.
Why? So, he uses them as slave labor. You should have been a hero.
Oh my god.
Anyway, we're probably digging ourselves a hole here.
We're not winning any brownie points.
Yeah.
So there's the other thing about this is there's a lot of inconsistencies. The ratio of females to males is very different than this comic. Even nowadays, when there are a ton more females in the gaming industry, the type of people playing it are sadly consistent with who I've seen, but their actions don't make any sense because they're not the actions of even irrational teenagers. Irrational teenagers don't act this retarded.
Well, okay,
and that's
again what are you talking about exactly? Because I'm not following you.
If you lose something in a game, you don't go kill yourself. That would be like, hey, I'm playing Call of Duty. I got shot to death. I'm gonna go die.
Well,
that doesn't make any sense.
I'm gonna argue with you on that point, only because again, I'm sensitive to mental issues. A person who's really invested in their character. I mean, people have committed suicide over strange things. I'm trying to remember the movie. Stars Jessica Biel and Dawson from Dawson's Creek. I forget. James Vanderbeek.
Is it Rules of
Engagement? That sounds right. Yeah, in that film, you don't learn this until the end, and sorry, spoiler alert to anybody who wants to see the film. In that film, there's a girl in the background. She works in the lunchroom. You see her in the library. You don't know what she's doing, and the first time I watched the film, I didn't see her. You know, she was just a person on the screen. I didn't see her as a character. And I think that's the intention of the director. James Vanderbeek gets love notes in his mailbox, in his college dorm room mailbox. He gets all these love notes, but he has no idea who they're from. He starts to suspect they're from Jessica Biel's character. And at the end of the film, you discover that they are from this non-speaking role character, the girl in the lunchroom who serves him his creamed corn. And you learn this because she sees him make out with Jessica Biel, and then she goes and slits her wrists. So, and so she has this imagined relationship with with Vanderbeek's character, and when he does not reciprocate her feelings because he doesn't know who she is, she goes off and kills herself. And I believe if you saw that film, you would say, okay, she's highly irrational and she has mental issues, but she's not crazy. I mean, or she's crazy, but you know, it's not how you said it with this character in the comic. You know, she needs help. The girl in the comic needed help. She was clearly too invested in this thief who died, because in the comic she kills herself.
Let me go back and finish my point.
Okay.
Even hateful girls in high school, which in my opinion is for some reason the most hateful group of people ever.
They are.
Even they don't act like this to another person just because something changes.
I would disagree. I've seen it happen.
Well, you've seen a character die.
No. I have seen... Okay, I didn't know the girl very well, but there was a group of what you would call the in crowd, a clique of girls, and they became friends with another girl who was trying to join the cheerleader squad. In the end, she was palling around with them over the summer. I saw this all happen because I was the manager for the equipment manager for the football team. So, you know, watching the cheerleaders is what I did with my afternoons at the beginning of the school year.
Way to go, Johnny.
Well, it wasn't that exciting, but it was cheerleaders. So anyway, they were doing tryouts, they were doing things. They got to the point where they were learning to toss each other up into the air. And this girl got dropped and had a minor break of her coccyx bone, and could not be a cheerleader anymore. And that caused the in crowd then, who was only accepting her because she had made the squad. Now that she was off the squad, they completely ostracized her, and she tried to kill herself.
Wow.
And again, completely irrational and not worth it, but it was her world at that point in time. And it was technically members of this in crowd who dropped her, who caused her to be ostracized. But because she was ostracized, she hurt herself.
There's been, no, I totally see where you're coming from, and you're talking about high school, and there's been some psychological studies done on teenagers and girls during high school, and it's said, if you go and do the research and look it up, it's said that during those years, during the teen years of high school, that is when girls become the meanest and can become, not like animals, but just basically the meanest people that you could ever be around. And I totally believe it. Not that I encountered anything like that. I was pretty shy, kept to myself. I really didn't have a clique of friends or anything that I ran around with. But yeah, I can totally believe it because of the things that, I have nieces, and some of the things that they've gone through in school, and I have a younger sister. We're not younger now, but, and the things that she went through, in school, I totally believe that those things could happen. And I think when you hone in on just one small, tiny demographic of a much larger category, because you think about gaming and you think about D&D, and if you took a table of teenagers, you go to a high school, you take a table of teenagers, and then you take our group and how we play and how they play, it's going to be totally different because of the psychology, their experiences, and it's different in that way, but it's just weird how teenagers fixate on what validates them as a person. So, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, first off, I just discovered we said the wrong name of the film. Rules of Attraction came out in 2002. Oh. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I was like, Rules of Engagement. Isn't that
that's a TV show
like a military?
Putty. Yeah. No, Rules of Engagement is, I believe David Spade and Putty, and this is a sitcom currently airing on some channel. I think Netflix and Hulu have it. Anyway, Rules of Attraction is a film. So yeah, I mean, there's this. The thing about this strip is it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 13, 14 panels long. I don't know. I quit counting. And it gives no background on where they are when they start the game. So yes, the thief player's actions of killing herself in later in the strip is stupid, but she should have. I mean, it's not worth it. It's not worth killing yourself over a character death because you just roll up a new character.
Yeah.
But she was invested. It was the way her group works. If your character, according to the strip, if your character dies, you can't be friends with anybody at the table anymore because you don't exist to them.
Do you guys think that this is relevant to our times?
Yes. Yes, I do.
So are there still people out there committing suicide over D&D?
I don't think there are people out there committing suicide over D&D. I think there are people out there who commit suicide or do things that, I'm going to invoke something pretty Columbine. Those guys felt ostracized. They didn't belong to any group in their school from their point of view.
Yeah, but
they did something really bad and dumb because of it.
And you're going to have that over, until the end of time of people being ostracized. But here we're talking about the gaming community. We're talking about a specific game. We're talking about Dungeons and Dragons and its effect on, obviously, what this guy thinks is an effect on the teenage culture of our times. But it's not the teenage culture of our times anymore. This was in the 1980s, and yes, it may have tragically happened a couple times, but with technology and the way that society has evolved, and then all the anti-bullying stuff that's going on, do you think that this right here, this movie, would be relevant to our times in regards to Dungeons and Dragons and the gaming community?
If they do it right, I think it could be. The way Mazes and Monsters handled it was Tom Hanks' character was going through a massive breakup. A lot was going on. He had a lot of pressure. He used Dungeons and Dragons as an outlet to what he did. Actually, Mazes and Monsters, or whatever they called it in that movie. But he used that as his outlet. It wasn't really the game itself that caused him the problems. It was just what he finally fell into to release it.
It was his vehicle. It was his vehicle of release, yeah. And I'll say that if you boil it down and specifically look at people who play Dungeons and Dragons, I don't think it's as relevant because Wizards of the Coast has done a great job of writing into the front of their book that this is a social game, that the point of this isn't something you're supposed to take that seriously.
Right.
They've done a great job about telling people not to be douchebags and play the game that hardcore. Which I know Gary Gygax. Well, I don't know, but I have a feeling Gary Gygax fully intended for that type of thing to be in his game from the very beginning, to tell people this isn't something to freak out about, this is just a game. But he didn't think it needed to be said because in his level and rational mind it didn't, but other people it did need to be said. Wizards of the Coast has written it into the book now, and I don't believe your average D&D player has psychological problems.
Cultist?
So
right,
they're not
So
cultists,
they-
the average D&D player. Now, if this comic and the again, if you're focusing on D&D players only, that I don't think it's a problem. But the scope of the story they can tell in this movie covers that bully mentality. You know, the DM is a bully, the cult is a bully, and you know they can show that through the ridiculousness of this script that Jack Chick wrote, in taken from a rational point of view, you will see that it's ridiculous to think that gaming could do this to you.
right. But then you're touching on a whole different set of issues. It's not Dungeons and Dragons or the gaming that is the actual issue. It's the psychological makeup of the group that's sitting around that table that's ostracizing one person just because their character dies. And it no longer becomes about the game. It becomes about the people and how they're brought up and the standards, the social standards that are set for them.
And that is the truth. That is the core of the problem. The only reason Jack Chick and anybody else can pick on Dungeons and Dragons in the 80s is there was no other option. World of Darkness didn't exist until 1991. If anybody wrote any other role-playing games, they didn't hit the prominence that Dungeons and Dragons did, and if they approached the prominence that Dungeons and Dragons had back in the 80s, everyone assumed they were just Dungeons and Dragons. That it was just another Dungeons and Dragons game. There wasn't World of Darkness and all these indie RPG games. Gen Con didn't exist in 1984 when this comic existed. Cons like that didn't exist to make gaming mainstream. Video games came out of this role-playing game culture. People said, well, I can't get my buddies together, so I can use this computer to make a game and play that game when my friends aren't available. So gaming has become a mainstream, well, maybe slightly off mainstream, off Broadway type of thing, of culture. So, the point is, it's not the game that was ever a problem. Dungeons and Dragons is not the problem and has never been the problem. It's the psychological makeup of the people who sit down to play it, and if they're cracked and on the ropes and having mental issues when they sit down, Dungeons and Dragons can just become the vehicle that causes them to spiral out of control. They're going to find a way to spiral out of control no matter what.
Right.
Dungeons and Dragons
I would just like to inject a correction. Gen Con started in 1968, actually.
Okay, but it's
beat me to it.
But it's not. You have to admit it's become something very different than it started out.
Right.
It's grown. It's mainstream. Gen Con in 1968 would not have gotten front page news coverage in a major newspaper like the Indianapolis Star.
It hit its first main location in 1972.
So it came out of Gary Gygax's basement or whatever, in 1972.
No, 1972 is when it moved into Wisconsin.
Okay.
1968, it was in Horticulture Hall in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Okay. Johnny, we have driven by there.
I know we have. But I'm saying it's different now in the year 2013.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like he's doing this Kickstarter and he's bringing back something that, okay, the psychological issues that are going on, definitely. I am totally like, okay, you wanna tackle bullying and ostracizing people because of the color of their hair or because their character dies. I can get behind that because we're trying to enlighten people about, basically turning people away or, taking them out of a human interaction. But here we're like, this is actually saying that, you got this handful I don't know, are they all evangelical? The Christian right,
It doesn't. Even in the rest of that comic, it doesn't end up touching on what exactly they are in that situation.
The religious aspect?
Right. There are some of them that it does actually talk about, but not all of them. It only follows the main character.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, Jack Chick, he's evangelical Protestant, and then, Pat Robinson's, which we're getting ready to talk about here in a little bit, you've got the couple of people, or this handful of people that are taking and talking about something. They have no idea what this is about, and they're like playing on the fears of society,
right?
Because of the psychological makeup of people. They're not even delving into the true nature of what Dungeons and Dragons are, what role playing games are.
Right.
All right. So with that, let's transition into the Pat Robinson article, because we spent like 30 minutes on that one. Pat Robinson, in a recent 700 Club, got a letter. Says, "Dear Pat, I wanted to ask you for your opinion. Is it safe for a Christian to enjoy video games that have magic in them if the person playing the games is not practicing the magic?" From John. Good job, John. I appreciate you writing in.
Yeah. Right.
Pat Robinson's response is, "I think the answer here is not how close can I get to danger, but how far away can I stay from it. I don't know what game you're talking about. I know there's one called Dungeons and Dragons that really destroyed people's lives. I mean, they got into this thing, and they were almost like demonic. I don't know what game you're talking about, but if it's based on magic and the occult and that sort of thing, stay away from it. There are other games you can play, but don't get into that. Is it wrong or not wrong? I just think we should flee from evil, period." So let's go over that statement real quick. First, Dungeons and Dragons is not primarily an electronic game in any way, shape, or form.
No, it's not.
So when this kid asks about a video game, it's badly responded to.
Not researched.
It's like he's answering the question without even answering the question.
Oh no, it's the same answer that he's given since It's the same answer he's given since 1984 on the same show.
Right.
He has done absolutely no research to tell us that what we want to look at is bad.
Right.
But he doesn't know what it is.
Well, okay, so I mean, Dungeons and Dragons has been turned into several video games. So to say, I mean, maybe he heard about Baldur's Gate being a video game and knew that it was tied to Dungeons and Dragons, but yes, I mean, okay, in case the listeners haven't picked up on it, we are all gamers. We all play Dungeons and Dragons together, usually about once a month, sometimes more or less. So we're adamantly opposed to what Pat Robertson is saying, what Jack Chick is trying to get across with this comic, because, we're not evil. Matt might be, but most of us are not evil.
Necessary.
No,
Go ahead.
We aren't evil. The game didn't make us evil. Pretending to cast a fireball at a dragon is not evil.
For the record, actually casting a fireball at a dragon, also not evil. Dragons eat people.
Wait,
right.
Hold on.
And potentially, casting a fireball at the wrong kind of dragon is just stupid because it's immune to fire anyway.
Yeah.
It's
just gonna.
All right.
Anyway,
so the damage that Pat Robinson and Jack Chick are doing to the gaming culture, is it still an impact like it was in the 80s?
Yes.
Right.
Is it?
Maybe not to the same degree, but yes.
That's why I'm saying, I can understand, Jesse, I understand where you're coming from, and like, hey, let them go ahead and put this out there, because it's just going to drive people to look up the games and see what people are talking about, and possibly they'll recognize that it's the psychology of people that has the impact, and not the games themselves, that the games are harmless if you go into them with, being educated, as with everything in life. You go into any situation being educated about the situation, it's probably not going to be harmful if you are tackling it in a safe way. If you're emotionally disturbed and you have a thing that makes you attached to things, you might have a problem with the gaming.
Right. You're going to have that problem one way or another in life.
Yeah, and
it's
anything.
Gaming is, yeah.
I just think that, have they run out of things to talk about so much that, all the shit that's going on, all the stuff that's going on in the world, and it's coming back to something they're rehashing from 1984 that's not even relevant to the times. Like, it's not relevant to their, I don't think there's been any suicides committed over Dungeons and Dragons in the last decade. There's, like Gen Con, we have conventions where all the gamers get together. It would be our quote-unquote, support group. Yeah. So it seems like they're attacking, one, they're not informed, they don't participate in this kind of lifestyle, so they have no idea what they're talking about. And they're talking out of the side of their head, and they're just spewing stuff to, spread fear into an uneducated populace. And then another thing, the thing that bothers me about Pat Robertson and this, some of the things that he said is that with religious tolerance going out there, nowadays, a lot more people are going Unitarian Universalist or things like that. He's saying that if you practice a certain amount of things, it doesn't matter, what you are, wizard or whatnot, because people do call themselves wizards nowadays in certain religions. You're demonic, and that necessarily isn't the truth.
Yeah, he's using passages from the Bible translated into English from, a dead language, ancient Hebrew, as saying, okay, because they use the word wizard when they translated it to English, that means anything associated with that word is evil. And, it's one of those...
Let's not delve too deeply into the Bible and...
Oh no, I'm not trying to interpret it. What I'm saying is, he's whitewashing the term because someone translated it that way back in the day, because that was the word in English that they associated with that word in Hebrew. Then it means the exact same thing today and is evil and wrong, and it doesn't mean what it used to mean. I don't. Back in the medieval times when the Bible was being translated, not medieval times. What am I thinking of? Not Renaissance, Reformation period. I forget. But when all that was, they believed that there were people who called themselves wizards and went around and practiced medicine, and now we'd call them doctors. Crack doctors, quack doctors.
Yeah.
Yeah, but apothecaries, but people, that's what a wizard was, and so that term has stayed with them, stayed with the vernacular, the definition has stayed the same, the meaning has stayed, and it's wrong. I do just want to jump in and play devil's advocate for a moment, because that's what I do in this group. Pat Robertson is answering one letter in this segment of the 700 Club on his show that he pays to have on the air, and it's his viewpoints. I don't want anyone to think we're saying that he's started a campaign against this. In my understanding, he hasn't. He answered one letter about a topic, and that was it. I mean, yeah. Anytime someone writes in and asks him this question, he's going to give that answer. but he's not waging a war on D&D. So I don't want to vilify him exactly.
I would also like to defend him a little bit.
Okay.
I was once called, as a kid, to watch the 700 Club when they were talking about Magic the Gathering, which is a collectible card game I used to be into quite a bit.
If your answer to this is going to be, and that's why I played it more.
Nope, not this time.
Okay.
He specifically stated that it was teaching young people how to gamble with card games. I don't play Magic the Gathering anymore, but I do love me some poker and blackjack.
Well, and at the time it was teaching how to gamble because ante used to be a big part of the game,
it was.
And probably during that time it was. So we're of the opinion, or at least Johnny is of the opinion, that this is still having a solid impact on the gaming industry.
Yeah.
These two articles.
Trying to.
Yeah.
For reference, another podcast that Matt and I are big fans of, and I believe you listen every week, like I do. Major Spoilers, great show. They occasionally answer viewer or listener emails in their Critical Hit podcast, which is a actual play D&D game, and is a good show to go check out after you listen to all of ours. And they talk about this. They get letters on this on occasion, emails, I should say, about this on occasion, where a person wants to get into the game but doesn't know how to tell their parents, who are evangelical Christian types or have spoken out against playing the games, and say that it's wrong. And they give great advice of, you need to sit down and have an open conversation with your parents and tell them what you see in the game and try to get their viewpoints of what they see in the game and figure out if you can come to a middle ground. I'm paraphrasing, and that's generalizing their answers, but that's my opinion and the one they spout the most often. So if they're still getting emails about this, and they're a big podcast, from what I can tell, much bigger than ours, but they're not Kevin Smith or Adam Carolla level of exposure. So if a relatively small podcast is still getting emails about this question in the year 2012, 2013, it's still a problem. Is it killing the game industry? No. But there's still a negative connotation, a negative opinion attached to gaming as a whole, and that is bad, because gaming is not a bad thing by itself. It's what you make of it. So that's just,
And that's with anything.
It is. I mean,
all right, let's move on to the third story.
Before we move on,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dark Dungeons, the movie, the Kickstarter. Did you guys actually read this? Because I don't think he's taken this entirely seriously.
I did.
His frequently asked questions are, what types of comedies are your favorites? The kind that are straight-faced in a serious manner. Is Jack Clark getting any money from this? No.
Jack Chick.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's possible.
It specifically states, no, Mr. Chick has not and will not receive any money from this film.
Right. He went to the family or the company and said, "Hey, I want this," and they said, "Okay, fine." And he says in his Kickstarter, in the explanation, that what he's going to do, he's going to expand it to actually make it fit a reasonable film length. I don't know how long of a film you can make with $12,000 that he's asking for. I don't know much about film, but he's turning this comic into a serious script, and he's going to let the script speak for itself. There, like we joked about it, but the comic puts forth that you can learn real magic, learn demonic spells, simply by rolling dice and doing simple math. And if that's true, I'm worried about all the accountants in the world, because they don't dice, but they do simple math. They do complicated math. They must be 20th level wizards. He's saying the absurdity.
All wrong.
Yeah, he's saying the absurdity of the story that was written in the comic is going to be obvious to the viewer of his film. He is presenting it as it was written, and when you see it, you will see the absurdity of it. So he's treating it seriously and saying, this is dumb. Why would anyone think this? Why would people think that you're going to get spells out of this? Towards the end, the evangelical preacher who wins the girl back comes across, again, I hate to invoke imagery, and things that are upsetting to people, and I apologize if I upset anybody, but the preacher comes across as a Nazi, as very Hitler-esque. And the last panel of the comic shows the main character of the comic saying, "Thank you, Lord, for setting me free," as the silhouette of the preacher burns all the D&D books. And, that is a very evocative image
that makes my stomach hurt.
Right?
Gotta love a good book burning.
So, okay. Let's look at this real quick. So the levels of backing on this Kickstarter are character levels.
Uh-huh.
What?
He's a gamer.
Yeah. So as an level 8 backer, I get to name a character
and cast spells.
Oh, those are all taken.
I know. As a level 7 backer, I get be involved in the creative process for only $99.
Yeah,
I love that everything is
oh my
9,
gosh!
not a full
gamer
revenue.
in the world needs to get into this Kickstarter. That way we can.
I don't know if this movie is going to do well or not, but it looks fun. He did receive almost $2,000 from a level 14 backer.
Is that the one where they get to be in the movie?
No, that's the one where they just get to decide if the movie is 1984 or 2013.
Nice. Because the way he wrote that, I didn't think he really...
For $1,999 or more.
Yeah,
that's what they get to decide. That is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to our third story because we've gone pretty long. Margaret Weiss Productions
there was a third
announced on Wednesday, that's this past Wednesday, that they are dropping the Marvel Heroic role-playing game license, saying costs are as not profitable enough to justify continuing to invest in the brand.
Yes.
So, Johnny, your favorite superhero game, not going to be made.
So is this?
I don't know if this is my favorite, but this is a good one. And I mean, I have issues with the game. I wrote a review on the site for it. We played a quick session one night at your guys' place.
Yep.
My issue with the game is that I don't want to play through comic book stories I've already read. I'm all about modules, but I don't want to... I mean, the idea of playing a story where Captain America fills the role of Wolverine in a story doesn't sit well with me. The game would have done much better, in my opinion, had they just written modules that were not Marvel comic storylines.
But Johnny, we're just playing the game in the Marvel 617 universe instead of the 616 that all the other stories take place in.
That's fine. But if that's what someone likes, that's fine. But rather than play the Raft breakout that hits certain beats taken directly from the comic, I would have liked to have played a tangential story to that. You bought the Civil War book, and I love it, and it has things that should happen that came out of the comic. And again, I don't want to just substitute different characters for other characters, but they give you enough material that I can write a adventure that is tangential to the Civil War, or not the Civil War, what am I thinking of, where the mutants are detained? Is that Civil War?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's Civil War. The mutants are detained, and this happens, and that happens, and the Sentinels come in, and I would I would want to play a story that's tangential to that, not an exact lift from the comic. Now, had they done that, I don't know if the game would have been any more popular. The downside of this game is in my opinion, is it's more of a narrative game. Yes, dice rolling is a major aspect, but it's more about telling story than it is about straight up dice rolling like D&D is, written in 4th edition.
Okay.
It went too far in a different direction, and then Disney bought Marvel, and they charged so much for their licenses, and the game didn't sell well enough for the company to continue to pay for the license.
I'm pretty sure that they licensed this after Disney bought Marvel.
You're right, they did.
I read into the statement more, and it essentially says that the sale point that they were getting, the number of sales, was not supporting the license. Yeah. And since I work in licensing, licensed product as it is, it's really hard to hit those numbers if you have a niche market that isn't making the sales, and I think that's what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Especially since we bought our books, PDF,
right,
through a third-party company, not even directly through Margaret Weiss Productions.
Well, you can't.
And so but I'm saying, like, they aren't even capitalizing as much as they could be. They're paying a middleman.
No, I would argue that you're wrong about that statement there. The PDF sales, they're capitalizing the most because there are no printing costs. So,
well, there are no print books for this.
Yes, there are.
There's the base book, but all the other stuff never came out in print.
Yes, it did.
Did it?
It was at
I have
Gen
never
Con.
seen it. I couldn't find the books.
The books you bought were all at Gen Con in 2012. I saw them. I read some of them. So they were producing a storyline that is apparently they're not sure if it's going to see the light of day. So that is not in print. But
talking about the Annihilation Order, Annihilation.
Yeah.
They're giving full refund. It's not coming out.
Right. Okay. So that's not coming out. But I believe everything else at least saw print, probably low run, but with PDF sales, all that money. I mean, the drive-through RPG or whoever you buy your PDF copies through is going to take their cut, but none of that money goes to the printer. So there's only two people dividing the money instead of the retailer, the printer, and then the gaming company. I imagine the writers and the artists are in there somewhere. I would assume back end with the company that with Margaret Weiss, but I don't know for certain. So PDF sales are actually the way to go, and a lot of sources have confirmed that that's the best way to do it, because print sales don't get them the money that they want. So I think it's unfortunate, but I understand where they're coming from. I like the system, and it needs some tweaking. But I believe a couple of sessions, and I would be able to fix what I don't like about it well enough without breaking the game. It's more about just developing how you play it than something being wrong with the game itself. So
yeah. All right. Well, it looks like we spent all night on a couple of news stories. That's all right. We wanted to say that we've got a little bit of a working relationship with the group, a couple of guys, the Dystopic Boys over at dystopicradio.com. Their podcast is currently, their main podcast is monthly. They have what they call last frequencies on the weeks that the regular podcast doesn't release. All of it's good quality product. We really appreciate their support of us and talking about our stuff. And they were on the movie draft with us. I can't say enough about them. I really, really like them.
I thought they were
and their
hilarious.
podcast is their podcast is really solid.
I really like Last Frequency. I just started listening to it last week. They only have 3 episodes out right now, but I like it because it's a podcast where they're talking about they talk a lot about soundtracks for past movies and upcoming movies. So if you're that, definitely check them out.
Yep, and check them out over at dystopicboys.com. You can look for The Last Frequency or the Dystopic Radio Network. They have a master feed, I think, on iTunes at Dystopic Radio, and you should check them out for sure. Did anybody else have anything else tonight?
Nothing else in our show notes?
No, not really. I think we've hit the key points.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else.
Johnny?
No.
Anybody
Johnny
else
Jesse?
doing anything?
Seems.
New
All right.
new movies? New anything?
No.
I'm
anything.
disappointed that we're not doing Iron Man 3, but hey, we're going to the drive-in next weekend.
Yep. Keep your eyes on the podcast feed. We will be doing Star Trek Into Darkness in a couple of 3 weeks.
Yep.
And we will be reviewing that in our immediate movie reviews. I think Jesse's going to be out for that one, but so should be Shirley, Johnny, and I. And then we'll be hitting World War Z, and Johnny's probably going to be out for that one because he's got some lame excuse about having a baby. And then July we're going to hit Pacific Rim, and we're looking at August and September and farther out. See what else we want to do for those. But keep an eye out for those.
We all have airplane tickets to go out to the Pacific Rim.
Yeah, that's exactly not it. And then keep in mind that we have Criterion Collection coming out. We should have in a couple of weeks the Max von Sydow movie, Seventh Seal, and then the next movie after that is Beauty and the Beast from 1946. Hopefully, Jesse, this one will be in English.
You never know.
You never know.
No.
So, I think that's it tonight for us on the Nerds Domain podcast. You can send us an email at nerdsdomain.com, or I'm sorry, at nerdsdomain@gmail.com. You can catch us on Twitter. I'm at Quiet. Johnny is at Fool's Mask. Shirley is at SNEDS70. Jesse is at J_Kimmett, or you can catch the company itself at Nerds Domain. You can also catch us on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdsdomain. We want to thank Josh Shop for our intro and exit music. And if you enjoy our podcast, we encourage you to give us a review over at iTunes and let us know what you think there. We'll talk to you real soon. Thanks.
Peace.